Well, welcome to the UIC podcast.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Can you introduce yourselves for our audience?
There you go for it.
I'm Ruth Pedrosa Pamias, and I'm a scientist here from the Ecosystem Center at MBL.
Yep. And I'm JC Weber. I'm a senior research assistant here, part of the Oceanic Flux Program at MBL. And yep.
Yeah, I missed that part. We are the Oceanic Flux Program team. Besides, we have also like Maureen Conti and Chase Glass as part of the team. And I hope that you all get, very engaged with the Oceanic Flux Program, a time series that started in 1978.
Very cool. So I understand that you all just had a research cruise recently.
Yeah, we came back like about 2 weeks ago or so. Yeah, our site is offshore Bermuda, about 75 kilometers southeast of Bermuda. And the Oceanic Flux Program, it's like a long mooring line with several instrumentation. The main part of the instruments are the sediment traps that we have at 500, 1500, and 3200 meter depth. So it's a very long mooring line. And we go there like twice a year to recover this long mooring line and turn it around and put it back into the water. So very recently we were there for doing this like mooring turnaround. And besides that, we also collected some additional samples from the suspended particulates that are throughout the whole water column.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's neat. The mooring itself, like Ruth was saying, it's deep. It's in over 3 miles of water, and I think it's 4,600 meters,
Yes.
45 depth.
45.
And the mooring is subsurface. The top of the mooring is about 250, 300 meters
Yes.
below the surface.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
How do you find it?
We have an acoustic release at the bottom of the mooring. So when we are out there with the ship, basically like close to the side, we send a sound signal with the specific codes that are in that they communicate with the acoustic releases, and then the releases basically release, and because of the flotation, all the mooring will come up to the surface.
and then we recover it from the surface. So yeah, and we know where it is because it's anchored down there. So it's right where we left it 6 months ago. So,
Have you guys ever had issues trying to find it?
yeah. So in the history of when you actually look at the flux record that we have, and it's on the website, because one of the things we're measuring is the particle flux and how much material is sinking down through the water column, and so that's what we're collecting in our sediment traps that are on the mooring, which are basically big funnels. And then you'll see there are a couple gaps. Once we had an instance where the releases were really close to we suspect that they're really close to some flotation that was at the bottom, and the pressures of the deep ocean, if there's any imperfections in these glass spheres that are in these little plastic hard hats that are protecting them, they can implode. And so we used to have that lower flotation a little closer to our releases than we do now. And we suspect that lower flotation may have imploded because the mooring itself actually has dual releases. We have 2 on there that we talk to the whole time that they're being deployed. So we know that they're working. We know that they're on. They tell us what depth they're at. And then they go to sleep and they wait for us to come back 6 months later and send the signal to wake them up and release it, where it retracts the pin and it all floats up. Well, if one of those releases fails, we always have a second one. And there's a kind of a chain going between the 2 of them. So it was very odd that we knew they were both talking when they went down, but when we went back 6 months later, we weren't able to wake them up, either one. And so that's an instance where we think what might have happened is the implosion took out the little transducers that are at the top,
yes.
the heads of the releases. And so, if that was damaged. So, so we suspect that our mooring that we weren't able to recover then is still there. And so maybe one of these days we'll be able to you get that sample. We know where it is. But it's like finding a needle in a haystack when you're down that deep, right? Looking from the ship. So NSF was great. The National Science Foundation. We got the resources to get another mooring to keep the record intact, because as Ruth said, this has been going on for over 45 years now, and so we didn't want to have any gaps in the record. And the deepest trap at 3,200 meters That's the one that has the, what is it, like 99%? It has the most coverage since 1978. It was in the water to start with the program, and then the other depths were added down a little bit later. And so one of the first things we did when we couldn't recover that mooring was we have a spare trap, and we got that in the water at 3,200 meters as fast as we could. So that way it kept that continuity until we could replace the whole thing.
How far apart was the new one compared to the old one?
That we got it replaced? What is it, about a year?
No. I mean, I think you mean about the distance, right?
Yeah, was it like within a kilometer, half kilometer?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
we want
close.
to make sure that the time series stays like measuring the same like trends and everything.
Yeah.
You don't want to put that too far from the original site. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, so a lot of the people that we talk to are not just oceanographers. We've got people from all sorts of different industries. So could you give us kind of what a day on the boat is like for all of us non-oceanographers? Like, what time do you guys wake up? I've heard things from some of our other scientists, and it sounds like a crazy schedule. I would love for you guys to run through a day.
Yeah, I mean, especially our cruises, I would say I've been in multiple like cruises and expeditions, and the Oceanic Flux Program cruises are quite intense because especially the days that we do the mooring turnarounds. But a regular day on board, I mean, the things that are very set are the meal times, right? So everyone, is in has a cabin, and then the meal times are like 7:30, and then offshore the lunch is around like 11:30, and dinner time is 5:30. But then working wise, we work a lot of hours. We work almost around the clock because we want to make sure that we keep sampling, and the ship we optimize the ship time, but always ensuring safety first. So it's like weather conditions are good and the personnel is good to work, then we go ahead and use all the hours besides the mooring turnaround to do additional like water sampling and sediment sampling and other collaborators that come with cameras or other devices. So the life on board, we go with the ship that's called Atlantic Explorer, and the crew is fantastic. Honestly, they are great. It's like we are all like a big family. Especially they've been in this boat for a long time, and we've been going there for a long time. So every time that we go there, it's kind of like, like seeing them, it's always a great pleasure, and they all work fantastic. So it's like in a close enclosure because the boat, it's, limited like capacity. But I think it's very good.
Yeah, I mean, really, the crew of that ship, I mean, we really view them as part of our team. We couldn't do what we do without them. I mean, and like Root was saying, having that continuity with them, and they're familiar with what we do, really helps our research a lot, And then part of what we do, these Oceanic Flux Program cruises, when we're out there, we usually go, the mooring recovery and turnaround and redeployment really could be over the course of 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
But we try to make the cruise a little longer because you don't want to recover that mooring and have it floating on the surface in rough weather or high seas.
Yeah.
It makes it's not only not safe, it's really makes it difficult as well. So that gives us some flexibility to move what date we actually do recover it and do the mooring operations. And then, as Rick was saying, we just fill that other time with other science endeavors that would only enhance our research. And so that gives us a lot of flexibility, whether it be we do in situ pumps, or we do, water sampling, or we have collaborators come out with us and they do some work. There's always something going on that boat.
Now, in one of your previous emails, did I understand that you have some high school interns with you guys, or college interns?
We had undergrads, not high school students, but like grad students or undergrads, getting to know the whole experience of being on board and participating in a research cruise, and seeing where sometimes when you have paper, you read a paper and then you have a plot and then you see a data point. Like seeing all the work that's behind that data point, like from going out there and, spending so many hours, prepping the instrumentation, retrieving the samples and everything, and then learning also how we process the sample and things like that. I think it's very of high value for them. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that's on the ship. I mean, so here in our lab, as part of our team, when we're doing, because we're only on the ship, we said twice a year we go out to do the recovery redeployments. Yeah. Most of the work is done here in the lab, analyzing the samples. And then we do have high school students as part of our team here in the lab. And I'm very partial to it because that's how I started. I started as a 15-year-old down the street at the Oceanographic Institution in the summer. And then that, Maureen, the other, PI on our project, and we always want to try to have a high school student be part of our group. Mm-hmm. We're very aware of the benefits of that. And so we have I've worked with her for almost 30 years, and we pretty much have since then always had one. And it's neat, like using the coulometer, which we use from the UIC to analyze the carbonates. It really is the perfect learning tool for them too. It's sometimes it's their first introduction into analytical chemistry and what they can do, and they can see how everything works, and actually, they contribute helping us get stuff ready for the cruises and getting the samples, even just helping label things and get stuff ready. And then they can start to see the big picture as they're with us for a while. And then they can even contribute learning some of these analytical techniques. Mm-hmm. It's really fun to see them grow in that position. And some come back and work with us as undergraduates, so they can build this little foundation, and then they can just build on that. And so it's beneficial to us having a continuity, and it's really neat seeing them grow.
I totally understand the necessity of getting things organized and labeled before you go out on any kind of endeavor, and the tedium and how boring that can be. So I totally get having the high school kids label stuff.
Yeah, but essential stuff.
It's essential, absolutely essential, and it's the best way to learn the gear. It's the best way to see what's going out. It's a very important job, but something that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
So on the boat, on the cruise, what is the work that you guys give over to the undergrads? You're like, what, this is undergrad stuff right now. Well,
I mean, we try to have them involved in all the activities that we do. It's not that we have this is undergrad work. But yeah, they are great helpers when, for example, we have to, the mooring is with, it has wire, but also with the float, it has chain, for example, right? And this chain has to be replaced every 2 years to ensure, the quality of the chain. So they are all great helpers, turning around the mooring with all these activities that needs a lot of workforce. Or, some things are kind of relatively heavy. So it's great to have an extra pair of hands, moving things. Or when we change the batteries of all the equipment, they get to learn the kind of batteries that we use, how we program. So it's, helping with the battery change and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, having the extra hands on board is really what it there's so much to do, and it really enables us to be able to efficiently do what we need to do. And it's a great learning experience for them, getting to see how it all fits together.
Sure. I would love to go check it out sometime.
You are invited to come.
Okay, well, 6 months from now, or 5 months from now, I'll be heading out with you guys. So what's it like turning around a mooring? What's that process? You told me about the acoustic release, which is how you guys find it. What goes on next?
So once the whole mooring is in the surface, basically you have to think as a big puzzle, right? And we have a lot of wire. The mooring has a lot of wire. So the recovery of the mooring starts from the bottom of the mooring, and a thing that we use, the last floats of the mooring, like near the seafloor, are orange. So basically, once is everything on the surface, we spot the orange floats, and then the ship would go, next to those floats, and then is when everything, the retrieval starts. Then we will retrieve the acoustic releases and the orange floats deattach all this instrumentation, and then we are start like winching, like spooling in all the wire. The wire, even though we have like thousands of meters of wire, is not in one stretch. So we have like sections of wire, because we want to ensure that if something gets damaged, we can replace it easily.
Is this electric wire or structural wire?
It's like
It's
well,
jacketed. It's jacketed wire.
Yes.
That's it's metal wire that's jacketed to protect.
Gotcha. Is it for data and power, or is it just to keep it together?
Structural.
It's
It's
structural.
structural. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have these different lengths. So like I said, they range anywhere from 100 meters,
Yeah.
but most of them are up to 400 meters. And then they're together with just hardware that shackles and pairs. It kind of
That gets heavy fast.
Yeah.
And Root was saying, we end up, the thing is on the surface, and we bring it onto the ship, spooling that wire, and then we take off all of our equipment that's in line with it and kind of secure it off to the side. And so that's a typical recovery.
Yeah, and it takes like about 5 or more hours to have everything on board. And then their turnaround activities begin. Like, it's a long process to like retrieve all the samples, change batteries, reprogram the sediment traps. It takes us like a lot of hours to do that. Sometimes we do back to back, like recovery one day, redeployment the next day. But sometimes, like, there are so many things to do that we have to at least leave 24 hours in between the recovery and redeployment.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, because the whole turnaround, I mean, we're recovering. We have the sediment traps themselves that are the main thing that we're out there collecting the particle flux. They're, like I said, they're basically big funnels. And you see some pictures on our website. And then there's sample cups on a rotator plate underneath. And so every 2 weeks while it's deployed, it's switching to a new cup.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that way it can be out there for 6 months, but we get that high resolution sampling.
That's great.
Yeah, so we have to then, when we have that on deck after it's recovered, we have to then get all those samples off, clean the traps up really good, and then we load them on with the new sample cups, and we have to reprogram them as far as when they're going to sample, like when do they advance. We have other equipment on there, like we have a acoustic Doppler current profiler that it sits at the top of the mooring that measures the current field that's above the mooring, and it does that by pinging little sound frequencies up, and they bounce off small objects that are moving, that are particles, and sometimes those particles are zooplankton, and you can even see them migrating.
Yeah.
And it uses that. It uses that Doppler effect to determine the speed and the direction of the current field above the mooring. So we have that, and we have to download that data, and we have to program it. So there's a lot of, and we have microcats. We have instruments that measure
temperature, salinity,
oxygen. So we download that data, reprogram it. So the whole turnaround is you're getting everything you just had deployed, you've recovered, and you're getting it then all ready to put back overboard for the next 6 months. And we spool the thing on from the bottom to the top, and then when we do the redeployment, it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
So once you get these sample cups on board, are you running your analysis while you're on the ship?
No, we bring them back here in Woods Hole.
Okay.
Then we have a lab here where we JC works with processing them all, and it's the whole methodical and process to ensure that we keep the highest quality standards of the samples. And once each trap cup is split to ensure that we can maximize the number of analyses that we can do from the each sediment trap cup. We do first imaging to visualize what's in the sample, and then we do elemental bulk analysis, carbon, nitrogen, and carbonates, and stable isotopes, and then elemental analysis, and then in some sections of interest we do lipid biomarkers, and then we collaborate with a lot of scientists that focus in other areas. We are trying also to go to see what's in there through genomics analysis, and we collaborated with some amino acids and 14C to know how all is the carbon. So we try to maximize the usage of these very unique and valuable samples to extract as much information as possible.
So go ahead.
No, at the same time that we keep archived of this sample, because what's possible now is one thing, but we want to make sure that in the future we can go back to the archive and have sample available for future analysis, because the technology keeps evolving very fast.
And that's really the beauty of the Oceanic Flux Program too, is its archival nature. It is this living archive that's only continuing to grow. And we have the physical samples after they're processed. They're size fractionated, which makes it easier for researchers to look at if they're targeting certain organisms, like looking at shells of pteropods or foraminifera. It's easier to work with them. We have the small size fraction, which is 85 or so % of the sample or more. Yeah. And that's what we do a lot of the elemental analysis on. And those physical samples are all archived. So you can essentially go back. It's like a sediment core in a way, or a time. You can go back in time and analyze stuff from the 70s or 80s or, a decade ago. Because the technology is always changing. And so we have that physical archive. We have an image archive that we've been building for 20-something years now, where we photograph everything in those samples that they're size fractionated, everything greater than 125 microns, or an eighth of an inch, gets photographed and under the microscope. And so you can go back and you can say, what was that sample from 2005? What was in that sample? Well, hey, we can go back and look at the pictures. And they're all quantitatively photographed. And so we've been building that archive as well. And that's something that we can build on. And it's the whole interdisciplinary aspect of the Oceanic Flux Program. It's so exciting when you have chemistry, biology, tying it together with the physics. And the program really is a community resource for the scientific community. I mean, that's its biggest strength. It has this archival nature, and it's this resource for other scientists with other specialties that can then work with these samples and provide information to help us put what we're seeing in context.
Yep.
Now, with all the data that you and your team are gathering, are you just interested in having the raw data, or do you in-house have projects where you are creating hypotheses and creating different studies that you're using this data for, or are you simply data collection and anybody can use it how they want or need?
No, we definitely, with the core analysis, like all the elemental stable isotope, carbonates and lipids, and we process the data, but also we interpret and and then later on also write papers and then go to conferences and make sure that to have a better understanding of the particle flux in the ocean. Through the time, how is this changing? How is this coupled with atmospheric patterns? So we are focusing on basically how the particle flux is evolving through a year, how it compares from year to year, and also how is it changing related to climate forcing, and how climate change also potentially is impacting all these particle settling. So we do have an area of research, and also, for example, how episodic events are impacting the particle flux. One of the things that we are focusing on is extreme weather events like hurricanes. How are those impacting the particle flux and carbon cycle in the ocean? So we have areas of research that we focus on, and then we do our own research, but then complementary, we collaborate with other scientists that they expand the analysis, but also they can use the data that we produce and investigate and discuss to complement their research.
Now, have you drawn any conclusion in recent papers that you find particularly interesting, or anything that has surprised you?
Yes, not that long ago, a couple of years ago, we published a paper, for example, that was the first one to see how well connected is the surface to the deep ocean when a hurricane is passing through. So there is a transfer of fresh material when a hurricane is passing through, because the hurricane, when it triggers, is basically an upwelling of nutrient-rich waters, that this stimulates the phytoplankton production, and therefore also like zooplankton and bacteria communities, start like also to interact with that phytoplankton. But then there is this transfer of fresh material down to the deep ocean, and we did see this with our sediment traps, and this was the first time of seeing this connectivity from the surface ocean to the deep ocean after these extreme weather events are passing through. And that now what we are doing is we did see this with Hurricane Igor from 2016. So we want to evaluate like what is the scenario that you need in the ocean, and also like with these extreme weather events that to trigger this export of fresh material. Are all the hurricanes like triggering the same effect? Are not? So we are investigating this, which having the OFP mooring is so unique because you cannot be out there when a hurricane is passing through, right? So if you have a mooring in there collecting samples constantly for you, and also like an archive. Right now, I mean, we are analyzing samples from like 98, for example, when a hurricane passed through, because we have archived like samples. So it's like samples that were archived then can help us to better understand questions that we have right now.
Right.
That's so cool.
The longevity of the Oceanic Flux Program, I mean, the fact that it was started in 1978 by Werner Deuser, and Maureen Conti became principal investigator in 1994, and I've been working with her since 96, and so it's been sampling for 45 years now.
Yes.
Right? Is where we're this is our 45th year, and so
Well, congrats.
yeah, and that's the exciting part about it is it's the longest running oceanographic time series of its kind. It's and to be able to have this data where you can look at things on decadal timescales. Now you're really starting to look at I guess the climatology of the ocean. That's
Yes.
a paper that Maureen and you have been working on coming up, and so it's really exciting to be able to look at it on this bigger scale, and you can kind of tease out just what's from interannual variability that you might have with what the bigger picture is on a decadal time scale, especially with the changes that we're seeing, with climate change in the ocean. So,
Is there anything you can talk about with that paper? Any sneak previews we can get? I'd love to hear what's going on.
Well, what we do see is that atmospheric patterns are very well linked with the amount of particles that sink down to the deep ocean. So depending on the circulation of the atmospheric patterns, basically it will trigger more or less upwelling of these nutrients up to the surface, which then therefore it will trigger more or less sinking down to the deep ocean. So if we have an impact in this atmospheric circulation, then basically that gets translated down to the deep ocean. I mean, in the beginning, when this program started in the 70s, they thought that the deep ocean was so stable, static, and disconnected from the surface. So we are seeing, and thanks to this program, that basically it's so well connected, from what's happening in the atmosphere, how it gets translated to the surface, and we can see the impact into the deep ocean. So this is fascinating.
And having the study site where we do at Bermuda, it's really good because there's a lot of other long-term research that's done there. There's the Bermuda Atlantic Time Series. It's based out of the BIOS, the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, and they're studying the upper ocean, really close to where we have our mooring. And so we can have our deep ocean data, and we can look at that particle flux and what's happening to these particles as they're sinking down through the depths of the water column, and really relate it to what they're doing and what's happening in the upper waters.
Mm-hmm. And then, with the mooring, it gives by having the OFP mooring, it gives the capability also of expanding the research that can be done. And I'm saying this in a sense, we had a collaborator, for example, put in a camera for some periods of time to basically image the particles that are sinking through at different depths. And also we got a project to evaluate plastic degradation into the deep ocean. So we put 2 incubators in the mooring line at different depths in the ocean to basically characterize if plastic degradation is happening once the plastics reach certain depths. So by having the Oceanic Flux Program mooring by itself with the sediment traps and all the measurements that we do is it's fantastic. And then that also gives the capability of building up further research with all these research questions that we have because the impact that we are having in our environment.
Yeah, it's really it's a moored subsurface observatory, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That's so cool. Have you? I'm fascinated by the plastics idea. Have you gotten much data from that yet?
Yeah, the project's still going on. It's an NSF funded project that was funded in 2020, but still going on, and we are getting a lot of data right now. The first thing that big question is when we did deploy different plastic types, right, from polyethylene, polypropylene, polystyrene, all the plastics that we constantly use and we wear as well. So we also deployed textiles because a lot of fibers also end up in the environment and they've been found in throughout the water column. So the first question that we had is it really the deep ocean ecosystem, is it going to interact with the plastics that we deployed during a 6 months period of time? And now we can say yes, because we did a lot of imaging also of these plastics deployed, and we do see differences between the plastic type and the microbial colonization in those plastics. So how the deep ecosystems interact with the plastic is different depending on the plastic type. So now we are in this a step of learning exactly what were the microbial communities that were in the different plastic types, and also if the microbial community was able to use as an energy source the polymeric carbon, basically as an energy. Can they eat the plastic? So that will actually tell us a lot of where is the missing plastic, because there is a lot of plastic that ends up in the surface of the ocean. But with the surveys that we are doing, and we know how much ends up in the ocean, it's 90% of it cannot be accounted for. So
90?
Yeah. So basically, is it getting dissolved? We know that can get dissolved. So it's a multiple factor. It's a multiple factor process, because it gets dissolved, it gets ingested. Some of it can sink. How is interacted with the deep ocean ecosystem is what we are trying to learn as well. Some will get buried into the sediment. So there are a lot of things that is happening to these plastic debris once they end up in the surface.
Wow. That's amazing. So
yeah, again, we will not be able to do this without the Oceanic Flux Program, because deploying these samples for over this extended period of time and at those depths, I mean, you need a big platform and infrastructure to do that. So the OFP gave this capability.
that's great. I would like to talk to you both about some of the challenges that you're finding in the field right now. And I know from some of the other oceanographers we've talked to, they've talked about some of the physical challenges on the ship itself. So with this current unit that we have in our research and development pipeline right now, we've got 4 huge D-rings on the machine itself, so it can get strapped into the boat, so that way it doesn't move so much during rough seas. But it sounds like you are bringing all of your samples back and you don't have your machines on the boat itself. So that is one type of challenge that oceanographers have to overcome. But I want to know what you two have found are some of the bigger challenges to overcome, and whether that's dealing with stuff on the boat or dealing with other parts of the scientific community or international governments or whatever it is. I'd like to know what some of the bigger challenges are for you in your field?
I don't. Right off the bat, to me, the biggest is time. You want to do all this stuff, and you're just like, how do you accomplish all of this? And that's where working with collaborators has been so key to our program. I mean, that's a huge factor. And then, at sea, you're always adapting. I mean, we do things. We still have to do some sample prep at sea when you're doing the filtration and dealing with the equipment. To troubleshooting in that, but. You make it work.
Yes, and related to the time, like getting samples from the deep ocean, it's very, very time consuming. That's why we know so little about the deep ocean, because from a ship sending an instrument down to the deep ocean and then bringing it up, let's say it takes 4 hours to just to get a measurement or a collection. So if you have to stop at several depth layers, it takes a long time, and then you will be in the same station. Imagine that we still need to learn a lot about the deep ocean, because more time and sample effort is needed through the different layers of the deep ocean. So yeah, time and instrumentation capability.
Yeah. But it's always growing. There's always new instruments. There's always new techniques. So that's part of the exciting thing of having such a long-term time series, is you can see this evolution, with your data over time too, and capabilities.
And you always want good weather.
Yeah.
When you are out there. So sometimes you have everything planned, and we are gonna take these samples from those depths with this instrument and everything, and then the weather, several storms are passing through, and you have the time that you have, because the cruise you have the length that you have. So because then the ships are very busy and have other cruises, so sometimes you have to adapt to what you have instrumentation wise, but also what the nature allows us.
Right. We're always the first couple weeks before we go. I'm always every day. You're watching the hurricane tracks, seeing where things are. You're like, please go the other direction. You want the hurricane to go while it's deployed, and you're not there because it's really interesting, but not while you're there.
Exactly.
So how many days was this past cruise?
We were offshore 7 days.
Yeah, about 6-7 days. Yeah.
Okay.
We're usually gone for about a 2-week period, because there's a lot. You get there, and then there's all the mobilization, getting all your gear ready and getting it on the ship, and there's that aspect of it. And then you're out at sea, and you want to make the most of it when you're out there, and that's why we had that flexibility of doing different types of things out there, so you can move your operations, adjust the schedule depending on what weather's permitting and stuff. And then when we're back, just demobbing from the ship takes some time too.
So is day one something like disembarking, getting to the area where your mooring is at, and sending out the acoustic trigger and then pulling it up? Or what's day one like?
Day one, usually we test. So there, from Bermuda to the OFP site, there are about 5 hours. So usually we go to the BAT site, Bermuda Atlantic time series site, which is what JC was mentioning about this other time series that studies the upper ocean. And we do a lot of measurements in there, because we don't want to do measurements where the mooring is, because we don't want any instrument to get tangled into the mooring, right? So we do all the measurements in the BAT site, which is basically an hour or so away from the OFP site. So we leave Bermuda, 5 hours or so we are at the BAT site, and then we test. We have a spare acoustic releases that then we will put those in the when we redeploy the mooring. So basically what we do, we test that day the releases, and then we sometimes we do a sampling of water, but we don't recover the mooring that day, because we want to do the recovery first thing in the morning. Also because the buoy that is in the top of the mooring, where the ADCP is, we have a strobe that basically flashes once it's in the surface. So we recover the mooring first thing in the day 2, well, if the weather permits, day 2, because then we start early in the morning, all the procedures to recover the mooring.
Right, you want to be fresh. And then, like I said, in addition to the strobe, we even have a little little iridium satellite beacon that's on the top, so it'll tell us where it is if it surfaces.
Yeah, and the
Cool.
radio.
And the radio. So we really have a lot. You want to be able to find it when it comes up, and then you also want to make sure it doesn't come up while you're not there. If it does, you want to know.
Okay, so day 2, you guys go out to the mooring, weather permitting, and then you send out the acoustic ping, and it starts to surface. You find the orange markers, and then how do you go about, like, does one of the guys throw out a fishing rod and pull it in?
Grappling hook?
A grappling hook.
No way!
We have some amazing pictures of it in action going. Because
Are you afraid of...
you
of
have the
damage?
bottom of the mooring, the whole thing is floating, right? And so that very last thing where the releases are has that string of floats. And so they grapple onto those floats.
Change.
And then once you get that bottom onto the ship, then you can attach it to that central. They have a big winch that we can winch the thing on. And that's where we start bringing the wire on. And then we take off the floats and the equipment and stuff that's all strung in line with it. And
And that takes 4 to 6 hours, you said?
No, sorry, not 46, 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, so the winching procedure takes 4 to 6 hours. Okay, so that's got to put you guys past lunchtime at that point.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the days of recovery and deployment, but especially recovery, we take breaks to drink water, put sunscreen, and have lunch and everything. But it's not that it's not like our schedule that is everything is set, because all the recovery cannot stop, so we have to keep going. So we take turns to have lunch, and also the marine techs are great, doing all the the instructions to the crew to bring all the instrumentation on board and everything.
Yeah, we really are fortunate to have, like I said, have that continuity with the crew, and that crew of the Atlantic Explorer is just amazing. And it's exciting. You're exhausted when you come back from a cruise.
Yes.
It is
I bet.
physically, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
But it is so satisfying, that feeling of when you have that mooring recovered, and then everything looks good, and you have amazing samples, and then you have it redeployed.
Yeah.
It is
splash
such a,
the anchor is over, splash, okay, gone, and then we track down how the anchor goes down. We communicate with the releases that they go down. So once the releases are settled down to the seafloor, it's like, phew, it's done.
Yeah.
See you in 6 months.
Yes.
Sure. All right, so day 2, you guys have brought everything up, you've disassembled your instruments, and now they're going back to some sort of staging zone where you can separate them into whatever groups they need to be separated into. What does that look like? How many people are working on that at a time?
Well, it always depends on the number of people that we have in the science party. We've done it as little as 3 people, but it's always better to be more people. Last cruise, for example, we were 4 people, but in the past we had also like students, more students coming on board, and then maybe we are like 8 or 9 people, and then it really makes a difference.
Yeah, and all the equipment, like the sediment traps and the acoustic releases and all that, when they're taking in the floats and all that, when they're taken off of the mooring wire when it's being spooled, that's all just secured on the deck of the ship. And then so once it's all on deck and the last thing that comes on is that top float, then that's when the turnaround process starts. And then we'll do all of our downloading the data and getting the samples and reprogramming. And that's typically what takes. Sometimes we've done it overnight if we're really turning it around, like Brute said, but we usually try to add an extra day in there just to get it all ready to redeploy then. And then we just do it all in reverse.
Yeah.
Putting the equipment in line, and then you start with the top and get it floating out, and then the last part over is the anchor.
Cool. Now with the samples themselves, are you transporting them back to shore in glass, or is there a different type of container you're using?
Yeah, so the sample cups themselves they're plastic bottles, and then if you look at the website, we have some pictures. You'll see them on the sediment traps. And they're just 250 milliliter plastic bottles that screw onto that rotator plate that's moving under the under that funnel. And so when we're taking them off, we have the caps, and the bottles are really clean, and we have caps that have these really clean Teflon liners. And so we really carefully, as soon as we take it off the rotor, we cap it up, and then we wrap it, rinse it off, and we wrap it with Teflon tape. And then we just bring those home in a cooler. I mean, they're fine. They're in plastic bottles. And
I imagined like glass flasks and foam cutouts with Pelican cases.
You want as little glass on that ship as you can.
Oh, I bet, shattering everywhere.
Yeah, but sometimes you need it, right?
Yes.
And you do exactly what you say. You just have to make sure you have something secure to put them in and protect them, and when you're working, both when you're working with them and then when you're transporting them.
So obviously seeing that splash and getting everything settled has got to be incredibly rewarding, but what's the most fun part of a cruise for you? I know that it's madness. I totally understand that it's a crazy schedule, but there's got to be something that you love every time when you're there.
Oh yeah, I mean, not research related. I always, when I'm out there, I love like the sunsets and sunrises are like so calming, and also like if you're lucky enough that the lights on the back deck are off, like seeing the stars, somehow it makes you think a lot about how small are we, because it's like we are in the middle of like the ocean, right? So everything is black. You just see the stars, and it's like, well, it's like a needle, like it's like it makes you think about the universe, kind of.
It really puts things in perspective, and it can. Those moments are so peaceful. And, and we've seen some really neat things. I mean, sometimes you're out there and the birds. Yeah. We had all of these birds that I don't know if it was from the storm. There was a tropical storm that went through before we went there, and maybe everybody got blown off course. It was migrating or whatever. We were like a floating bird sanctuary. We had this flock of warblers that showed up when we were out at our site. They were the first.
A sandpiper.
Yep. We had a heron. What else did we have?
A pigeon.
Yeah, there was a dove.
A dove.
And a catbird. It was the most eclectic group of birds, and they somehow found the boat, and they stayed with us the entire time. They stayed with us all the way back to shore, and then they were safe. We gave them a little food now and then, and some more fresh water, and
keeping us company. Even when we were doing the deployment, they were like on the shoulder.
They didn't have any fear. It was very odd, and I think it's because we were out at sea. They looked at us differently than people on shore. It was very, very odd how they weren't afraid of us. But it was fun. It made it fun. And so you have little things like that sometimes. And really, I really enjoy. I mean, everybody's kind of in this together. Yeah, you're working your butt off and you're exhausted, but we're all working toward a common cause. Everybody's really familiar with what we're doing, and it's just really nice being with everybody. It's a real sense of family when you're out at sea, especially with this group that knows that we all know each other very well. I look forward to that aspect of it as well.
And the food is fantastic. Also.
They do. Oh, good. It's incredible. I eat so well on that boat.
Nice.
I miss the food every time. The last day is like, oh no, now I'm gonna miss the food.
What's the weirdest thing you guys have seen out there?
Weirdest thing.
I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, like things like we just told you about are very surreal with the birds.
Like
you don't expect to see that. Me personally, I wasn't on the cruise, but I heard a story. Maureen Conti, that when she one of the cruises she was out, our principal investigator, she talked about they were pulling up. I think it was the CTD. It's Rosetta bottles that samples water, and they were bringing it up out of the depths. And there was an oarfish wrapped around it.
Yeah,
or a
that's
baby
true. I
one,
heard about that.
which is crazy.
Yes.
I mean, that is like someone that lives down deep that you do not see.
Yeah.
And she said it was bright red, and it just at first they didn't realize what it was, and when they did, it was just so surreal, and they just let go and poof.
Wow.
So I wish I had seen that, but I feel like I have from hearing the stories. And it's really, you see some crazy stuff out there. Yeah. Every once in a while you see, wildlife, you see whales.
Dolphins. Yeah. We see dolphins.
So it's you're out, like I said, you're out there, and it's not a pleasure cruise. You're working your butt off and you're exhausted, but it can be there. It can be really enjoyable, mostly because of the people you're with, and you do see some just amazing things that a lot of people aren't going to have the opportunity to see, and you really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, now that I've gone completely off script and given you guys none of the questions from the template I sent you, uh, I could talk to you guys all day. Everything that you have been mentioning is so fascinating. I will very seriously take you up on that offer to come out 6 months from now and see if I can help in any way I can, and I'll definitely document the whole thing. But what I know you said when you were 15, you started working alongside everybody. Is what got both of you sparked into the field of science?
Well, for me, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. Usually I'm wearing a Steelers shirt. I wear this for the interviews. So I never really saw the ocean. My ocean was Lake Erie when we would go up there. And I was in, I don't know, I was 14, and my family, my mom took us on vacation to Ocean City, Maryland. It was the first time I ever saw the ocean, and it made a huge impression. And I was really interested, and we had one of those assignments when after this summer you go to school, and one of the first things was an essay like, oh, what would you like to do growing up kind of thing, like a research thing, right? And so I wrote every research institution I could find. I found this book in the library and said, hey, what does it take to become a marine biologist oceanographer? And one of the places I wrote to was the Woodsville Oceanographic Institution down the street. And they mistook it for asking about their summer jobs for high school kids. And so it said right in the thing you had to be 16. And I'm like, well, I'm not, but I'm going to fill it out anyway. Why not? So I sent it in. And they called the lab group that I was working with there. And they called the house. And it's funny, my dad has the same name as me. I go by JC, and we're both Johns, and he's John. They were looking for John Weber, so I gave him my dad's work number. And then we figured out that they were looking for me. And I could volunteer when I was 15. Just in my family, I can only afford to come. I came up for a month just to get my foot in the lab, in the door in the lab, get to meet everybody. And then I came back as a summer job every year after that through college, and that's kind of how I got started. I loved it. I loved being by the water and just the research. That's kind of how I got started. And again, that's why our group is always, we're very partial to, we'll always have high school students in the lab.
In my case, I'm originally from the northeast of Spain, nearby Barcelona, from Catalonia, and I grew up in a old countryside farmhouse. So kind of, I was not far from the ocean, but I would say I wasn't not very often going to the ocean. So I was always, though, very, very interested about the nature. I always was with ants and soil and leaves and trees and checking them all and everything. And then therefore I end up studying environmental sciences because I wanted to learn more about our planet. So while I was studying environmental sciences, I got the opportunity to do an internship in the marine geoscience department, and starting collaborating with them. And then basically I got very engaged with everything that University of Barcelona, the Marine Geoscience group, they were doing. They invited me to a research cruise, and I was like, wow, really? So I went I remember 2009 was my first research cruise while I was still studying. And I was thrilled about the opportunity, and then the whole how the ocean is working, all the transport of particles and sediment from coastal to the deep ocean, and how everything is connected really got me interested. And then I did the PhD in there, but then I found out about the opportunity coming here at the Marine Biological Laboratory to work with the Oceanic Flux Program in 2016, and since then I'm working here. So yeah.
And what advice would either of you have for young people who are interested in getting into the sciences?
Basically, keeping the mind open and getting to learn as much as possible of all the topics of interest. I did not know at all that I will be ending up being an oceanographer. I just knew that, I was very interested in the earth and how, was the functioning of the cycles, how everything was working and why and things like that. So keeping the mind open and getting to basically to learn what people like and interact with as many people as possible and ask questions and not assume that you have to know something. You always can learn it after the fact. That sometimes we are afraid. In my case, even it was the language, like, oh, how am I gonna do like this if I don't even, how, like I spoke already 2 languages, but of course I needed English, right? Like for the PhD. And then it's like, there is not like a wall that you cannot go through. It's basically like, you just can keep going and learning everything that you need to keep progressing with your career.
Yeah, and I would really echo that, and I'd say, just not be afraid to really reach out if you're interested in something.
Exactly.
You can reach out to someone. I mean, see something interesting on someone's website, send them an email. Worst they'll do is not email you back. And it's having that not having that barrier and not being afraid to do that, I think is big. And then also not trying to map out your whole career, for your whole thing. Like Ruth was saying, you kind of need to see what twists and turns it's going to take you and what doors are going to open for you down the road, so you have to be very open to new opportunities. And I think when kids are in school, I would really say I think it's really important. I think a lot of colleges and stuff, they try to specialize so quickly, so soon. And you really need to, especially in science, have a really solid foundation. Yeah.
Get chemistry, biology, physics.
Yeah, you need those. You need that solid, broad foundation to build on, especially because, some of the most exciting research is really interdisciplinary. And so if you don't have that foundation and toolbox to draw from, you're going to limit yourself there. And take advantage of opportunities outside of the classroom. Like we said, we have our high school student that comes in after school and works here, and in the summers, summer opportunities, take internships, stuff like that. It's really not necessarily your degree you need, and it's gonna help pave the way, but it's really what you put around it and those experiences that are gonna set you apart and from a lot of other people that are in a very small field.
And also be ready to get no as an answer. It means that it's okay if you get no's, because you'll get yes as well. But sometimes when you get a no, you apply to some position and then you get a no, it can be of course frustrating, but then that actually helps you to build up and improve in certain way that you will get a yes, and then you will think oh, that's good, that actually I really like that yes that I got. So
and maybe that no wasn't meant to be, and it's a good thing they said no, because you had a better opportunity that showed up later that you wouldn't have had if you had taken that one. So
I've always come to understand that every no is just pointing you closer to your yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of looking at that.
So with people who would like to reach out and contact you, what's the best way to get a hold of both of you?
So we have a website. If you Google Oceanic Flux Program, you will find the website right away, and in there are all our contacts. You can learn more about the Oceanic Flux Program. We have pictures of the sinking particulates that are taken under the microscope. We have pictures of the cruise activities, and we have also an outreach section where even there are coloring pages for kids. We had a research assistant, Alana, that she was a great, she was great drawing, and those can be downloaded, and you can find out more about other outreach activities that we have done. But again, don't hesitate emailing us or just browsing through the Oceanic Flux Program website.
And the website really is, like Ruth was saying, that just looking at the pictures, I think we see all these amazing things under the microscope. And I have a screensaver in the lab that just cycles through it, and everyone always stops and is like, oh, that's so cool. Or we have students coming through the lab and we're doing a tour. And we really we love the opportunity to share some of these really amazing things that we see in these sediment trap samples. You look at those sinking particles that we collect in the trap cup, and you look in the cup, it just looks like a cup of dirt, maybe a big aggregate stuck in there or something like that. But when you look under the microscope, it's some of the most beautiful microscopic shells of these pteropods that are these sea butterflies that have all of these diverse morphologies of their shells. foraminifera, and even, we're collecting the sinking particulates. Sometimes we also will collect the traps will attract some of the things that might be around the trap, like some of the microzooplankton that aren't the sinking stuff that we're necessarily interested in, but we can isolate it and we pick it out and we still photograph them, and we see some amazing things just there too. And we've actually built a pretty good archive of that as well. So it's really, there's some phenomenal things when you actually look at what's in those trap samples and how much they change from sample to sample, the 2-week period to 2-week period. It's incredible. Like, I still see things I've never seen before, and I've been looking at it for forever. So it's really, really neat.
Well, I would love to talk to you about these tiny shelled creatures and how ocean acidification is impacting that and their numbers that you're finding and other impacts on the ecology of all of these different biospheres. But I think that just means we're going to have you guys back on.
Part two, stay tuned. But we couldn't leave it on that thought. I mean, we just want to say that, one of the things that brought you to us is because we use that UIC's kilometer to measure carbonates, and that carbonate content in the shells of these micro zooplankton, that's one of the things that we're looking at, is because they're going to be sensitive to changes with ocean acidification and that with those carbonate shells. And so that coulometer, what do we say? Most of 65% or something.
Yes.
So the sample are carbonates. When you actually look at the materials, it's a really important component of what we're to understand the carbon cycle for the ocean, and then when you're looking at changes over those decadal scales, and like we said, and it's been a huge resource for education. Especially, we have a older model kilometer. It's a 5150. It goes back decades, right? It's still producing amazing data. We keep waiting. We're like, okay, they're not going to no replacement parts with this anymore or whatever. But it's still clicking along. And one of the really cool things about it, and some of the pictures we sent you, the kids using it, because it's an older instrument, like, all the parts are out. You can see how everything works, right through, like, what the different scrubbers are doing, how the reaction's working, right to the titration cell. And so from an educational standpoint, it has become just such it's evolved into a really important resource for us, not just for our science, but even with education for these kids.
That's great. Well, we are looking at making a 5018 pretty soon, so you'll have something new. It'll be it looks a little more modern and sleek than the old ones, but I think it's still a great educational tool because, like you said, most of the interactions are still happening visually outside of the unit. And you can still see the titration cell outside, so it's got that great visual component for people who are visual learners.
Yeah, it's been incredible for that, and that whole concept of you run reference materials, because we do it. We don't just take the raw number. We run reference materials from the deep ocean, and we know what they are, and we know the carbonate content. So we have them generate a calibration line with the response we get from the instrument, from what and so it introduces that whole concept of running, knowns to get, so you can quantify your unknowns and that. So it really is big. It's been a wonderful learning tool.
That's great. Well, we want to make sure that you guys continue to have operating machines, and from my end, it's been one of those learning experiences where it's like, okay, well, we built really great stuff to last, and some of that stuff was built when I was a kid. So it's like, how do you...
Your dad has been amazing in us keeping that thing alive. Because when we've had issues, nobody knows anything. I mean, he knows everything about that thing, and he's been wonderful talking with about that. It's been really good. I mean, the support we've had from UIC, I can't speak highly enough about it. Just the fact that some companies would just put their hands up and be like, "Oh no, just buy our new one." Yeah, what are you doing with that thing? Yeah, and which we will. We always budget the new one for when this guy finally gives up the ghost. Right. But he has been the support we've had from UIC with this instrument has been amazing. So,
well, when it's ready, I will send you guys some information on our new machine that is directly aimed at oceanographers. It's really, really cool, and I've had a lot of hands-on time with it, building it out with our engineers, and it's neat and it looks cool. And there's we'll get you the information when that's ready, and then we'll also get you the info on the new kilometer. But is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with before you go?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I what do you think?
No, try just one of the main thought is that we just talk through all this conversation is like programs like the Oceanic Flux Program. We learned so many things, and one of the key things that I always think about is how well connected our planet is. So thinking about the deep ocean is not as far as we think.
Yeah. And there's the whole, like I said, the interdisciplinary aspect of it. You have the biology, the chemistry, the physical oceanography. You can't understand. You can focus on just one thing. But if you really want to see how it all fits together, looking at them all together that's really what I think when things really start to come into focus. Mm-hmm. And really just encourage people to look at our website, because we love to share what we do. And like I said, we have these amazing pictures, and you can look at the data with the flux and see the trends that we've been seeing in interannual variability. Mm-hmm. We really encourage folks to look at the website. The pictures alone are worth it, just to see what's in the strap samples.
Great. Well, thank you both very much for being on the UIC podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. We really enjoyed it.